Good morning. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Today we're on lesson 21 of the Gospel of John, and we're covering John chapter 9, verses 35 through 41, and John chapter 10, 1 through 21. This one's called Door of the Sheepfold and Shepherd of the Sheep. Most of us would say that sight is the most important sense, and the one of all senses we would want to keep. But we can be too earthly minded to understand the big picture. Without sight, lust would not be nearly as challenging. Matthew 18:9 reminds us that if our eye causes us to sin, we should pluck it out. Whatever difficulty that brings, it is much better than eternal hell. Deuteronomy 34:7 tells us that the eyes of Moses were clear and strong when he died at 120 years old. That is even more amazing after 40 years in the wilderness. I had cataract surgery in both eyes at the age of 61, half the age of Moses. My years in the sun on the tennis court caused so much exposure to ultraviolet radiation that it expedited the formation of cataracts. But imagine Moses, long before sunglasses, without similar issues. Physical sight is an amazing gift, but as Jesus said to Thomas, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing." Let's read our first passage today. John chapter 9, verses 35 through 41 says this. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you." Then he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind." Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, 'We see.' Therefore your sin remains." When Jesus heard that this man he had healed had been excommunicated for acknowledging the role of Jesus in his healing, Jesus sought out this formerly blind man. Jesus didn't dance around the point that he wanted to make, but immediately cut to the heart of the matter. Do you believe in the Son of God? Though many Jewish men had studied the Old Testament scriptures for many years, they did not see or understand that the prophesied Messiah would be God or the Son of God. Let's look at some of the ways God had announced this. Isaiah 7:14 says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Emmanuel, meaning God with us, points to a Messiah being born and living on this earth. But we also can see how the Jews could have misapplied the word son used in this passage to him being born to a virgin rather than to the Son of God. But this verse makes misunderstanding that much more difficult. Psalms 2:7 says, "I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have begotten you.'" This identifies to us that God has a son. And the word begotten designates that God can only be a father by having a son. And Jesus can only be a son by having a father. This verse from Isaiah tells us more. Isaiah 9:6 says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Some still must misunderstand this verse, thinking that the terms son and child are interchangeable, but that is not the case. Jesus is pre-existent, along with God the Father and the Holy Spirit. They were all there together in Genesis 1 when God began the process of creation. Jesus was not born as a little baby in heaven, but nonetheless, Jesus is the Son of God, and God is the Heavenly Father of Jesus. There's only one place where Jesus was a child, and that was on this earth, where he was born to Mary and to Joseph, though Joseph was not the biological father of Jesus. Of course, in his first verse, John reminds us that Jesus, the Son of God, also is God. John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." On this day, Jesus revealed to this formerly blind man that he is the Son of God. You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking to you. This formerly blind man believed that very moment and worshiped Jesus. Isn't that the response each of us had when we realized that Jesus was the Son of God? We do not know if the Pharisees were listening to all of this conversation, but we do know they were listening to part of it. The Pharisees heard this: "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind." The Pharisees believed that they had all the revelation of God that they needed for salvation. In fact, most of them thought that just being born a Jew was enough for salvation. Their sight was clouded by preconceived notions, and they arrogantly placed their understanding of the Bible as far surpassing that of anyone else. In fact, they felt like they had nothing to learn. Before the miracle that Jesus performed on this man, he was even more blind than the Pharisees, as he was physically blind and spiritually blind. At the end of this passage, this man had both physical sight and spiritual sight. The Pharisees retained their physical sight, but remained spiritually blind. As they were unable to see Jesus as the Son of God, they were dead men walking. Let's read the next passage. John chapter 10, verses 1 through 6 says this: "Most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." Jesus used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. After healing a blind man, Jesus used a different analogy. Previously, Jesus had identified the Pharisees as blind guides and said that they were like the blind leading the blind. It does not take any additional information to see the danger in this process. Blind people need someone with sight to lead them, and it is with this leadership in mind that Jesus speaks of the relationship between sheep and the shepherd. In a previous passage, Jesus identified the people of Israel as sheep. Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 36 says this: "Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd." Sheep need a shepherd because he can protect them, he can lead them to food and drink, and because he is willing to sacrifice himself for the sheep. For all believers, we have a shepherd. King David gave us a beautiful explanation of what our shepherd offers us, and it is certainly worth meditating extensively on these words. Psalm 23 says this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is the first passage that I learned in Hebrew, and I think it's beautiful in the original language. I'm going to read it to you. Adonai ro'i lo eksar, binot deshe yarbetseni, al me menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni, b'magale sadek, lama'an shemo. Gam ki alek bagay salmavet, lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umeshantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'arok lefanai shulchan neged sorai. Dishanta vashemen roshi kosi reveya. Aktov vachased yirdafuni kol yemei chayai vashavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim. A sheepfold is typically walled, enclosed, and gated, and was typically used at night. It kept the sheep in and the predators and thieves out. The sheep were not there alone, but the shepherd remained with them. Most of us have heard some pastors teach about what happens to sheep that stray, and the common explanation is that the shepherd breaks the legs of the sheep and then carries the sheep. For those who have heard this story, it is completely false. No shepherd would do either of those things, breaking the sheep's legs or carrying the sheep around. Adult male sheep weigh between 100 and 350 pounds, while females weigh between 100 and 220 pounds. What is more likely is that the problematic sheep would be the first to be eaten. But this behavior completely contradicts the attributes of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Pastors sharing this story are typically self-identifying as leg breakers. I can think of one in my life who did not break legs, but threw the sheep under the bus in any disagreement. To me, this is one of the most dangerous tales of fiction that far too many pastors teach as being from the Bible. My favorite part of this biblical passage is that the sheep hear the voice of the shepherd, know the voice of the shepherd, and follow the voice of the shepherd. The shepherd calls his sheep by name. Jesus knows each of us so well that he knows more than our names. He knows everything about us, including the moment we will die and the number of hairs on our heads. The people did not understand that Jesus was speaking of himself. So Jesus continued with this passage. John chapter 10, verses 7 through 21 says this. Then Jesus said to them again, Most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But a hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Therefore my Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This command I have received from my Father. Therefore there was a division again among the Jews because of these sayings. And many of them said, He has a demon and is mad. Why do you listen to him? Others said, These are not the words of one who has a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? As stated before, there are 7 I am statements in the Gospel of John. In each of those, we need to see that Jesus is claiming to be the I am. This is the title of God that he shared with Moses at the burning bush. In this brief section today, we see 2 of those 7 I am statements. I am the door of the sheep, and I am the good shepherd. For those who have not figured this out already, let me state the obvious. As believers, we are the sheep, and the one who leads us, guides us, protects us, feeds us, rests us, and will lay down his life for us is Jesus, the Good Shepherd. In that sheepfold, the shepherd would open the gate, let his sheep in, and close the gate. He guarded the gate and would not allow anyone to enter or exit. And the shepherd also kept watch to ensure that a predator or thief did not try to climb the fence. Luke told us this in Luke 2:8. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Is it any wonder that God announced the birth of Jesus to shepherds? These same shepherds who, just like Jesus, were keeping watch over their flocks by night. By the way, God never sleeps. Isn't it comforting that he watches over us always? There are other references in the Bible to the fact that the only way to the Father, the only way to heaven, and the only way to salvation is through Jesus. In another of the I am statements, Jesus told us that he is the way. That is not one of many ways. He's the only way. In Noah's Ark, there only was one door. All who were saved went through that one door. After all the animals and the 8 people had entered the ark, God sealed that door from the outside. God carried those aboard from a judged earth to a new earth. He covered the ark with pitch to seal it and make it waterproof. The Hebrew word for pitch is kopher, and its related verb is kapar, with the noun atonement being kaparah. In the New Testament, 26 of the 27 books speak of false teachers, all but Philemon. And this passage in John reminds us that false teachers and false prophets are wolves among the sheep, wolves in sheep's clothing. Satan is fighting for his life and knows what the prophecies of the Bible say. He either knows that his time is short and has a limit, or through his enormous pride still believes that he will defeat God. Attacks on believers should be expected, and as we live in a world where sin is pervasive, most of us expect attacks when we are out in the world. But some might expect church to be a safe place, free from the attacks of Satan. Instead, that is the easiest way that Satan can adversely affect a believer, through false doctrine. Here are a few examples. How many churches avoid the creation story and focus on evolution to describe the beginning, removing the role of God as creator? A second example would be the push to accept transgenderism as acceptable. Is it possible that God made a mistake and had a baby born as a boy when it really should have been a girl? A third example is the anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian worldview that is creeping into the church. In the Great Tribulation, God will bring 1/3 of the Jews to salvation, and his focus will once again be on the Jews. Satan hates the Jews for giving the world a Messiah and the Bible. God stated in Amos that once he has placed the Jews back in their land, no one will take them out of their land. Does that sound like God is in favor of a 2-state solution? A fourth example is that Jesus was a great and moral man and a gifted teacher, but he was not the Son of God and did not rise from the dead. I have said this many times, But I truly don't believe that people who do not believe in the physical resurrection from the dead by Jesus are saved. For if a person does not believe Jesus was God, how can they be saved? And if they do not believe that God could conquer death, how could we conquer death by going to heaven? We can see how Satan takes some truth, mixes it with his lies, and tries to remove God from the picture. Jesus spoke of laying his life down willingly for the sheep. We love God, but only because God loved us first. He demonstrated that love by his death for us. But some people reading the Bible miss the important aspect of the willingness of Jesus to die for us. There are people who claim to be Christians who hate Jewish people because they were responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus. We can hate the Romans for completing the task. But why do people not consider that it was our sin that placed them there? But the bottom line is that the cross was the goal of Jesus. It was what he came to accomplish. The cross was not something done to Jesus. It is what Jesus did to sin. Think about the greatest love when going to sleep, knowing that the God who loves us is still watching over us. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Have a blessed day.